Celica is a church girl who was once the heir to the Zophian throne, but after Chancellor Desei destroyed the villa where she and her royal siblings lived, Sir Mycen rescued her and brought her to a small village in southern Zofia called Ram. Her supports are serviceable enough in that they reinforce her treatment and thoughtfulness of others, like getting Mae her self-confidence back, or trying to help Atlas ease his concerns about his brothers. She's just a really nice young lady. Her innate kindness and desire to see others safe reflects similar traits that Milla shares, but like Milla too, these things are also her greatest moments of contention in the story. Over the course of these past few months, I've read Celica's lines over and over and over again. I've spent months understanding more about Celica, how come she decides to do certain things, what logic she uses, what is happening both inside and in front of her when she makes them. She's far more complex than some people make her out to be, to the point where some frustrations and accusations, like trusting Jeddah or being hysterical towards Alm, are misunderstood. At the same time, I must acknowledge where Echoes falls short in her writing and explaining my own frustrations with Celica in certain points in the story. This video is meant to follow Celica's crucial actions in order. All of them, no matter how good or bad they make Celica seem, they continually peel back layers of an emotionally reserved, hugely burdened, and morally conflicted young lady as her journey to find Milla becomes more and more difficult, confusing, and complicated. I'm about to spend nearly an hour white knighting why Celica is an excellent character because of her personal growth over the course of her quest. Not only that, but discussing how effective those crucial actions represent her personal worldview, Milla's philosophy on life, and Echoes' story theme of humanity versus God. Buckle your seatbelts because we're going to be here for a while. Act 2 begins with a dreadful vision of Alm being killed by Emperor Rudolph. Fearing the worst for the boy she loves, this nightmare is the final warning that compels her to travel to Milla's temple, suspecting that Zofia's barren fields, the rise of terrors, and the invasion of Rigel are all somehow related to Milla's sudden absence. Put together, it's a strong enough case for Celica to finally leave the island in search for an answer. Celica's emotional compulsions, just like the vision, impacts many of her decisions, and sometimes spearheads them entirely. For all her wisdom and rationality gained through her upbringing and teachings by Noma, many of her calls to action are impulsive and bullheaded, nearly always at the potential direct expense of her own well-being. Thwarting Barth, Garth, and Greeth were all instances of Celica putting her neck out there where it didn't necessarily need to be, but because of her incorrigible selflessness, charisma, and strength, she succeeds in making Zofia a better place. In doing so, she gains the trust, respect, and support of her allies and her people. But it's a dangerous mindset, to put absolute confidence in herself to get things done and the faith in Milla to set things right. But this is all Celica's ever known to do. She grew up with the fundamental understanding that all of her decisions, as difficult as they are to make, are not done for her sake, but for the sake of others, as Milla should do, as she was taught. She was also raised to have faith in Milla's bounty, as she, along with other Zophians, are taught that Milla sustains them absolutely. Celica understands that both being the bearer of Milla's brand and the last remaining heir to the Zophian throne carries with them both responsibilities that no other person can neither shoulder or begin to understand. And while she may not know the real meaning of her brand, she does believe it makes her the chosen one for the journey she's about to take. The parallels between Celica and the goddess Milla are evident even in the box art, but narratively speaking, Celica thinks and acts as Milla does. Milla is a goddess who strongly believes that her responsibility as the patron deity of Zofia is to ease humanity of their struggles and to provide them with endless bounty and happiness. Aside from Milla's overbearing and selfless nature, which causes Zofia's people to be too dependent on her, she's also empathetic and naive to a fault. When Duma breaks the divine accord and Rudolph seals Milla within Falchion, she quickly seals the power of Falchion away, consequently making it impossible for her brother to be killed by human hands. The reason? She loved her brother too much to see him slain, even though they both knew the prophecy that Naga had foretold would see them both killed by the bearers of the brand. Celica's empathy for others also manifests in sacrificial acts, not only in that she is literally willing to sacrifice herself to prevent her friends from being harmed, but also in that she's willing to put her life on the line for the benefit of her fellow Zophians of whom she feels obligated to help. For example, going out of her way to end Barth's reign of pirate terror so that her people may no longer be at the mercy of his control over the Zophian waters, or going completely out of her way to end Grief's reign over Zofia.
I have no intention of wasting time on idle philanthropy, Saber, but there are no guarantees I'll ever return from this journey. I would at least like to ensure peace to those who have been so kind to me. Is that so unreasonable?
She's a warrior priestess, not only on a mission to find the motive behind Milla's absence, but to free the Zophians from the strife they face because of it. Celica is a hero and defender, whose actions are motivated by a sense of duty as bearer of the brand, feelings of compassion for all people of Valentia, and by the kindness in her heart. Last and certainly not least, her love for Ulm and her desire to keep him safe.
We aim to drive back the invaders. Nothing more.
But why do you have to lead this rebellion? My son's grandson or no, you're neither knight nor noble. So why make yourself a target like this?
Celica's first contentious emotional action occurs in Act 3, when Ulm and Celica reunite in Zofia Castle. What began as a heartfelt reunion quickly devolves into a heated debate revolving around two clashing perspectives. Ulm's a battle-ready soldier, now named leader of the Deliverance, a group of knights and peasants who simply fight to drive Rigel back to their icy wasteland. But Celica sees the war as being a smaller matter compared to the retrieval of Milla. She's frustrated with his belligerence. He's not only putting a huge target over his head, which makes Celica's vision of Ulm closer to realization, but he's willing to continue killing Rigelians, and willing to lose Zophians in the process. Celica believes that Valentia and its people will suffer regardless if there's a war or not, but Celica's far-sightedness undermines Ulm's cause in Zofia. She's right in that this war doesn't solve Zofia's famine, but this isn't some stupid war.
My station doesn't matter, Celica. I'm here because I was called.
Zophians right now need Ulm to be their vanguard to protect home soil and to put an end to Rigel's reign over them. Each child's upbringings has caused them to value different things. Ulm is a village boy who values independence and the self, while Celica's upbringing was fostered by the belief that humanity begins and ends with divine intervention. Each child is set in their own way, and will not lose sight of their objective.
Do you think I wanted this fight? This all started because Lima IV went and angered the Empire. If you wish to point fingers, point them at the ruler who failed his people. It's his fault we're in this mess.
That's not... Well, so what if it is? Maybe you should go become king if it's such a damnably easy job.
After Ulm accuses Celica's father of failing his people, her feelings explode. She lashes out on his belief that royalty is so black and white that the right answer to being a king is just to not fail his people. Ulm clarifies, saying that he just wants to keep Zofia safe, but suggests that the heir of Zofia could just show up and fix her problems. Celica is offended by his unknowingly ignorant remark and reacts with grief and frustration.
Besides, there's an heir. A princess of the royal family may have survived. If she turned up and fixed all this, I'd happily return to Ram.
Come on! There's no secret princess! The Zophian royal family is dead!
But how can you be...
Enough! Just enough. Go fight your war if it makes you happy. I'm going to the Temple of Milla.
What causes Celica to explode like this? After 7 years of wishing to see Ulm again, she dramatically storms off with Ulm questioning what just happened. As dramatic as it is, there's a handful of reasons why Celica's actions play out in the way they do. Celica is indignant. Sure, Desai and the other Rigelians ran away, but crops still aren't growing and terrors are still rising all over. There are bigger problems than fighting a war, but Ulm cannot see it. Royalty for Celica is an extremely touchy subject, since it's provided her with nothing but hardship. She's seen her home destroyed, lost her half-brother, and has been hunted down twice because of her lineage. So it wasn't a personal failing from Celica that caused her to hide away from her people, and consequently not lead Zofia like she's convinced that that's what Ulm is suggesting. But consider this as well, Ulm's remark at her father's failings. That's where her ire towards Ulm began. We do not know exactly how Celica feels about her father, because while she's adamant that she would never think of him as her father, she does admit this in the endgame.
I don't bear him any grudge. Not now. I just think he was a very sad man. Perhaps if I'd been there with him, I might have helped him change. If I have any regrets, it's that.
Celica resents Lima for his actions, but her outburst here may be fueled by frustration and helplessness to be there for him, or perhaps simply from the fact that he's still family. Think about it. It would be bizarre for Celica, as faithful and forgiving as she is for all people, to hold such hatred for a single person. That's what makes her upset, and it's also what Alm apologizes for when they see each other again in Act 4. Lastly, and perhaps most vexing for her, she cannot just tell Alm that she's the heir he'd so willfully hand the reins over to. There would be too many negative consequences for her to reveal her nobility to Alm. Suppose she does tell him. Then what? Celica would take the throne here and now and be dragged into this war by necessity? Then Milla will never be helped. Alternatively, what if she did tell him and still went to Milla's shrine? The people would see Celica as the true spawn of Lima IV, foregoing her royal responsibilities in favor of her own personal agenda, making her no better than her father. Would Alm even let Celica leave, knowing that she is royalty and therefore a ripe target for bounty hunters? Let's say that he did, and promised to keep this massive game changer a secret. How does keeping this secret all to himself as a leader of the Deliverance help him positively in any way? The point is, the truth would either serve Alm's mission or it wouldn't, but neither option is favorable to Alm or Celica individually, or Zofia as a whole. So he will fight his war, and she will voyage to Milla's shrine. So Alm and Zofia can truly know peace. This argument also marks the first clash between Milla and Duma's philosophy in the present day. Alm's worldview that one's status in society is irrelevant reflects Duma's philosophy on forcing humanity to hone its potential, while Celica downplays the importance of this war in favor of what Milla values, her own raw power and capability to provide for humanity. These are two opposing perspectives, neither one is fully thought out, and neither one can complete the other without common ground being made. Celica and Alm don't have any, and neither did their respective dragons. Currently, each child and their respective gods parallel one another in thought, and they cannot work together. The befuddlement over her argument with Alm negatively influences her judgment in the next scene with Conrad. She chooses not to follow Conrad's advice about taking the longer westward route to Milla's temple to avoid potentially falling victim to the Duma faithful's traps. The first thing she thinks about is seeing Alm again, and after some delegation with her friends, she declines Conrad's advice.
No! Don't come any closer! Lady!
Are you unhurt?
It appears I am. Thanks to you. I owe you an apology. You warned me this would happen, and yet
Do not apologize. But stop allowing petty emotion to cloud your judgment. Your choices steer the fates of more than just yourself.
You're right. I can offer no rebuttal.
Conrad makes a decent point here. What Conrad is telling her is not to let trivial and unimportant feelings distract her or make her act a certain way. Sure, her hurting heart isn't petty in the sense that it's completely worthless to her, or Conrad, but it is when it's compared to the bigger picture going on in Zofia. Celica agrees with him, because she knows that that call was made because of that argument on the balcony that left her upset, but those feelings are irrelevant to Zofia's people or Milla herself. She was raised to keep her emotions reserved when she's faced with difficult choices, but this scene serves how difficult that is to accomplish. She has several things that are motivating her, but these things are also starting to conflict with one another. Here, her love of Alm has run against her love of Zofia and her love of Milla, which causes tension on what may be more important. As the story unfolds, especially into Rigel, these conflicts get worse. Situations get more and more complicated and less ideal. Juggling these problems on her own, on top of the responsibilities she has, to me, makes her internal struggle complex and admirable. And I believe these problems should be recognized more often. Judgment on her character and actions in Act 4 typically comes down to her outbursts in Dolth's Keep, Dead Man's Mire, and Duma's Temple. The criticism has to do with the apparent thoughtlessness and brashness of her actions. Why would you throw yourself in front of Dolth? Or, why would you trust Jeddah so easily? I'm not trying to be dismissive to people who ask these questions, because even though I think these questions make incorrect assumptions about Celica, these are helpful ones to pose to start digging into how come Celica makes them. Celica first crosses paths with Jeddah in Dead Man's Mire. Jeddah proposes a mix between straight-up lies, half-truths, and actual truths that Celica can't really accept or deny, mainly because she doesn't have much of a clue of what he's talking about. Between being told that he will cede Milla if she offers her soul, which is a lie, that Milla and Duma are destined to go crazy as all dragons are, which is true, and her soul is needed to free Duma and Milla from their insanity, which is half true, Celica makes the smart decision to not trust Jedda's words or follow through with his bargain. Before she completely blows him off, Jedda mentions that her sacrifice could mean that Alm can be safe. Left stunned and to dwell on everything Jedda just told her, she keeps quiet until they reach Dolth's keep.
Surely there is no call for needless trouble. This way, Your Highness. Even if you leave this place alive, the faithful will hunt you down. How long will you place the lives of your friends at risk, Your Highness? You're more clever than that.
Dolth is exploiting Celica's need to keep her friends safe. She's smart enough to understand that the longer she spends time resisting the Duma faithful, the more danger she puts her friends in. The Duma faithful only care about Celica's friends insomuch that they can use them as a bargaining chip since they only need Celica at the tower. Dolth plays into this reality and guilt trips Celica.
Silence!
Stop! Leave them alone! Please, I'll do whatever you ask.
Celica doesn't obsequiously give in to Dolth. They are literally preying on her core desire to keep her friends protected and provide an obvious solution to Celica's predicament. So when Dolth pushes Celica to the edge and literally puts Mae's life in danger, she immediately gives in. Because of course she would give in. It's either that, or see her close friend get killed if she remained indecisive. It's not about trusting Dolth or Jedda's words, it's about who Celica values more, herself or others. Conrad then swoops in and kills Dolth.
Hey! What do you think you're doing? Would you so easily cast your life aside?
That's not... My choices are not your matter, sir.
Not my matter.
You have aided me more than once, and I am grateful for it. But who are you to presume to know better how I might spend my life? What could you possibly know about me?
Celica, what's going on? It's not like you to act out like this.
Nothing is going on, Mae. Please just leave me alone. None of you can possibly know what I'm feeling.
I mentioned earlier that Celica's mentality is a dangerous one. Putting total faith in herself and Milla is double-edged. Yes, this makes her a superb leader for Zofia. She stands for what Zofia values and is charismatic and strong enough for people to swear their allegiance to her. However, such dependence on herself and the supernatural makes Celica neglect the same thing that most Zofians often do. Celica doesn't have faith in humanity. She's been fostered with the strong belief that Milla's bounty provides for all Zofians, and likewise, Duma provides for all Regalians. A future without gods is unthinkable. And to hear that one day, the gods will go insane and destroy themselves, and then to realize that she is literally the only person that can save them, by sacrifice or otherwise, is terrifying. Nobody in this world is prepared for this reality. Only a select few even know of the prophecy. As far as a post-Milla world goes, it means crops will die and that a terror apocalypse will happen. Add that to the growing contention between every different thing she values individually crashing into each other, and Celica is left with a slew of thoughts racing through her mind with no easy or right answer. On a more personal level, and maybe for the first time in Lord history, Celica doesn't depend on her friends for help, outside of being soldiers for her cause, really. Not disclosing anything to Saber after her first and second encounter with Jedda, and telling Mae and Boey to leave her alone are instances where she chooses to bear everything on her shoulders. Her lack of trust with them is met with frustration, and Conrad even offers to split the burden with her and tries to get her to promise not to throw her life away. Yet all Celica concedes to is that she shouldn't throw herself at the enemy so willingly. Celica's trust issues are often met with frustration by her critics, especially when compared to her seemingly trusting behavior over Jedda's words. Here's my stance on that topic. 1. Regarding the lack of faith in her friends, Celica shouldn't be expected by them to disclose anything regarding her personal feelings or motivations. And 2nd, Celica does not trust Jedda at every step. Echoes approaches the red and green retainer archetype more intimately than other installments. Mae and Boey's primary purpose on this mission is to guard Celica with their lives, and as friendly as Celica is to them both, they are effectively her retainers. Celica needs Mae and Boey to protect her and help her get to Milla's temple. Mae believes that it isn't fair that Celica won't give them a chance to possibly understand what she's going through. It's important to consider that this is just who Celica is, though.
And you've always been the type to deal with all your problems on your own. Anyway, I just wanted you to know you can talk to me about anything, okay?
She's been bundling things up all the way back in Act 2. Being reserved is built directly into who she is. It's not meant to push the story along. On a side note, I honestly think arguing the strategic value of telling her allies about Jedha's bargain is tangential, but here's my take on that. Boey, Mae, and Saber aren't strategists, but even if they did come up with a plan revolving around Jedha, it wouldn't have mattered. Jedha had them beat the second they entered Duma's temple. No one on Celica's team can outsmart him. Nothing would have changed. In Conrad's case, it's definitely nice to have some solace in knowing that she has another family member in the world, but unfortunately that's just about all Conrad has to offer. Even though Conrad wishes to help her shoulder her burden, saved her twice, and is family, I don't think that's nearly enough to convince Celica. At the very least, she listens to Conrad's advice to consult with Halcyon, the former High Priest of Duma. I suppose here's a good time to remind everyone that Duma isn't a wicked evil god like Grima or Medeus are. He's Milla's brother who simply has his own way of taking care of humans. Celica may not worship Duma like she does Milla, but she wants to help him. Thinking otherwise about him is easy because the faithful have purple skin, lose their souls, and are constantly trying to kill the main characters. Celica's brief consultation with Sage Halcyon ends up becoming an important milestone in her journey to reach Milla's temple. He knows all there is to know about Milla and Duma's fate, what Celica and Alm's brands actually mean, and what is happening in Valentia. Halcyon, like Noma, can teach her something and potentially set her on the right path.
Ah, Celica, child of fate. I'm glad you've come.
Child of fate. You're not the first to call me that, but I have no idea where my fate lies. Please, Halcyon, grant me guidance. Tell me what fate holds for me. I'm so lost. I don't know what to do.
Upon reaching Sage's hamlet, the stress levels of her isolation from her allies, distance from her people, thoughts towards Jedha and Alm, and increasingly conflicting motivations has bugged her out. Should she continue on this journey and risk her friends' lives and keep them in the dark so as not to stress them out? Or should she keep them safe from increasingly terrible danger from the faithful and enter Duma's temple on her own? Should she even be approaching the temple knowing that Jedha is waiting for her? It all seemed so clear before, didn't it? Reach Milla's temple, save some Zophians along the way, but now she can't do either.
I know you have suffered much along the path here, Celica. But I fear I ken no more of anyone's fate than you do. What I do ken, however, is this. 2 things exist to guide you. One is the brand you bear. The other is your soul's pair with the self-same mark.
The self-same. Do you mean Alm?
Indeed. Why were you born with the brand? And why are there 2 of you? These are the questions you must consider. And always remember that you are not alone.
Right.
Halcyon rekindles her self-confidence. Despite her trouble she faces now, her brand and the moniker she and Alm carry is meant to guide them on the right path. Celica still must reach Duma's temple and must continue her journey to find Milla. Halcyon helps her realize that she isn't alone. Alm will be there too, and they will face whatever this fate is together. Halcyon doesn't help her with strategy or how to handle Jedha's words, but restoring Celica's faith in herself equates to restoring her superpowers.
You're not angry? I said such terrible things to you back at the castle.
Huh? Wait, that's been bothering you? I mean, sure, I was sad you didn't seem to see my side of things, but I'd never get mad at you.
Why not?
Why not? You sure do like putting me on the spot. Didn't we have a similar conversation years ago?
suppose we did. You were always so nice to me while I'm always thinking only of myself. I'm sorry, Alm.
The second conversation between Alm and Celica is interesting. Celica's introspection during her second conversation could simply be her admitting regret in not considering how Alm felt when they were youths in Ram Village and in their conversation on the balcony. But I think a larger moment of self-reflection is at play here. She refers to Alm's niceness towards her in the past tense, but she refers to her self-centeredness in the present. It indicates that she knows that she is selfish. She is secretive to her allies because she thinks she doesn't need to rely on them for support. But she also knows that by doing this, she frustrates them and makes them feel helpless, which makes her feel awful. Apologizing to Saber for never telling him or her party that she actually met with Jedha before, and pleading with him to trust her until they reach Duma's temple is the strongest example of this guilt so far. Celica holds herself accountable for her own grief, and yet she doesn't actively try to fix it. Instead, she continues her journey to reach Duma's temple with the same state of mind as when she first entered the hamlet. Why? Put it simply, Celica's praxis has gotten her midway through Rigel. She can handle all of this pressure on her own, now more than ever, with faith in herself returned and Alm's power bolstered by Halcyon's intervention. She just needs her friends to fight for her just a bit longer, until they reach Duma's temple so she can determine the truth behind Jedha's claims and Milla's condition. I understand. Even though not really trying to make herself better in the eyes of her comrades could be a knock against her character and something that is at the very least frustrating to watch as a player, I actually like this character trait for a few reasons. First of all, if her writing is meant to push the narrative that Celica believes foremost in herself and in the gods, then having an "if it ain't broke, don't fix it" perspective fits that notion. Halcyon just renewed her self-confidence and basically guaranteed that Alm will meet her at some critical moment, whatever that is, or whenever that is. It's also emblematic of the larger idea that Celica is written to be so pious, so it builds up to her revelation that humanity is destined to supersede the supernatural over the responsibility and welfare of Valentia. Having Celica be self-aware enough to recognize the consequences of her actions is not only humanizing, but this trait is something I always find is nuanced and refreshing to see in a main character whenever it deeply impacts them. It's pretty humanizing for Celica's cracks starting to show throughout her journey. Her resolve, her self-sacrificing nature, and stubbornness are all things that have successfully propelled her to where she is at this moment. She's done a lot of good for the people of Eastern Zofia. Every recruitment that Celica has for her army comes from her showing her compassion, bravery, and heroism, and more specifically, her resolve and confidence in herself to do what she thinks is right. Yes, obviously that behavior put herself in hopelessly dire situations, and Act 4 explores how problematic her personality is. But just because it's easier to point out what Celica is doing wrong shouldn't dismiss what she's done right so far. So far, I've tried to do my best to explain Celica's perspective in the moment of many of her decisions in the story. But now we've reached her most controversial decision in the game, trusting Jedha. If the main issue with Celica and Jedha is that she trusts him over her friends, then we need to look at what Jedha is actually saying and how Celica is really reacting to it. His first bargain back in Act 4 was a mix between truth and lies. It was a lie that Milla was all well and good, when the reality was that Milla sealed herself within Falchion, became a giant stone statue, and was presumably warped and carted off to Duma's temple. But it is true that Duma is going nutso, and Milla's power to provide for Zophians was dwindling for a while now. Them being fated to destroy themselves is also true. Celica reacts to all of this with total skepticism, and at the end is just left to dwell on a suggestion that sacrificing her soul could save both patron deities. And Alm too. It seems that Alm being involved gives Celica a personal stake in this, and more validity to Jedha's bargain. Celica, at this point, is unsure whether Jedha is blowing smoke up her butt, because while it sounds fishy, he knows about Alm. He knows what the brands mean. He knows stuff. Their second conversation still sees Celica being skeptical of everything Jedha has said so far. Celica is sketched out about Jedha's bargain and will only make a decision after she's seen Milla for herself. Whether he's defeated or not, Jedha merely leaves and says he'll be waiting for her atop Duma Tower, just like he said before. Celica and Jedha's third clash is at the top of Duma Tower, where Jedha reveals the truth of Milla's conditions to the party. Rudolph sealed Milla and turned her to stone, but upon being sealed, she sealed away Falchion along with her. The result was an entirely stone monument of her and the blade, unable to be used. Jedha then announces his bargain to Celica's party.
If you truly wish for her release, you know what must be done. You must offer up your soul to Lord Duma.
Celica reveals that only the soul of a brand bearer is needed to save the dragons. With everything starting to fall apart, Celica begins to see how hopeless saving Milla has become. As far as she's aware, her goddess abandoned Valentia for some inexplicable reason and has left Zofia to the care of a crazy Duma. Celica's plan to consult with Milla personally has failed. This is the worst case scenario, and she opts to go through with the most spiritual and pious answer. Sacrifice herself in hopes that it will resurrect or unseal Milla from her own bind, or that it will in fact quell the madness inside Duma and create a balance in Valentia again. It's not the most optimal plan, to hope that her soul can fix something for the greater good, but it seems written to convey that there's still a chance for Milla to be salvaged, or worst case scenario, that Duma can be salvaged. This is fine. The premise of Celica's actions are reasonable, but what I find the real issue to be is the execution of those actions. The prison scene with Alm, Celica, and Jedha, and the sacrifice scene that happens afterwards are two of the most strangely sequenced, hastily written, and poorly executed scenes in Echoes. In the prison scene, Jedha warps Celica and himself to a lower level of Duma Tower where Milla's stone body and the falchion are located. Celica sees Alm and eventually explains that killing Duma would cause Regel's lands to become as barren as Zofia's, causing more people to starve. She follows that up by saying that he can't even kill him anyway, because Milla sealed away the falchion. Jedha starts to cackle about a new age of fear and chaos under Duma happening. Alm denies it, but Celica tells him otherwise. The only way to quell the madness in Duma's heart and to settle Valentia is for Celica to give her soul to him. Jedha leaves to let the couple talk one last time. Alm tries to tell her to hold on and that he'll rescue her, but she tells him that she knew what waited for her here. Celica basically tells Alm that she will die for everyone's sake. In the sacrifice scene, Celica and Jedha are alone with Milla's statue, and she demands that Jedha release Milla before she sacrifices herself. Jedha says he can't do that because mortals have no say in the matter. And then Celica figures out that Jedha lied to her. And to make matters worse, Jedha tells Celica that he'll be sending Alm towards her shortly. So I find these last few scenes with Celica and Jedha and Alm a mess. The confusion derives mainly from the dissonance between Celica's motivations in the 3 cutscenes in Duma Tower. And if these scenes left you frustrated for your first time playing, or second time, I think maybe this explanation can serve to why that was so confusing. Let's begin with Jedha's line here. In the tower scene, Celica needs to sacrifice herself to release Milla from her own seal. Speaking with Milla is no longer an option, so the next best thing is sacrificing herself in exchange for Milla's freedom. It is implying that Celica is doing all of this for Milla's release first and foremost. Time passes and Celica has yet to begin to bargain with Jedha before the prison scene begins. During the prison scene, however, Celica behaves as if she has no other option left but to save Duma.
It is the dawn of an age of fear and chaos, cradled in Duma's shadow.
This line is important. Celica obliges Jedha's claim and doesn't even talk about the possibility of freeing Milla with Alm. It makes it seem like Celica has no hope for rescuing Milla at all, and the final resort she has is to sacrifice herself to save Duma from his insanity. This is confusing, because Celica is completely ready to die without even trying to go through her original plan to free Milla. Why would there be an age of fear and chaos if Milla were to be released? It's made even worse and more confusing in the sacrifice scene. Suddenly, Celica is back to wanting to free Milla and back to half-trusting Jedha, and she wants Jedha to fulfill his end of the bargain. She seemed to have just remembered what her purpose was after forgetting in the scene just before. The ingredients for a good deception plot are all here. Celica half-trusts Jedha's words because she has no other choice in the matter when it comes to saving Milla, but she loses to Jedha the literal second she walks into the temple, and Jedha forces her to do everything after they reach the top of the temple. It's acceptable for Celica to resolve to do something sacrificial, because she knew Worst case scenario, that's what she needed to do to save the world. Celica being forced to cut her losses and sacrifice herself for Valentia's entire future, consequently leaving it in Alm's hands to govern, is fine. Unfortunately, what actually happens is Celica forgets what she's supposed to be doing and follows Jetta's whims at the end. The poor execution of these strangely sequenced and quickly paced cutscenes makes the second thing happen, when Echoes was supposed to be illustrating the first thing. The sheer confusion from these particular scenes are so distracting that I don't even think it's appropriate to entirely blame Celica on her own behavior. The writing is just bad. Don't get me wrong, her secretiveness, stubbornness, lack of faith in humanity, and self-sacrificing nature are all flaws that lead to her downfall, but these scenes don't provide Celica with the opportunity to crumble and act out of desperation because of these flaws in a natural and satisfying way. Regardless of the execution, Celica is meant to lose, but Celica's character arc has not ended yet. The climax of Celica's arc is during her clash against Alm.
Hear me, bearer of Duma's brand. Grasp Falchion now in your hand.
What's this? What is the boy doing? Impossible! No one should be able to unbind that blade!
Trust in Falchion.
The last twist in Act 5 is Milla unbinding herself and Falchion from her own seal, granting Alm its power and sending her hippie vibes through it to resurrect Celica. So I gotta admit something. Explaining this plot twist and how good it is kind of tangential to how it relates to Celica, or this video kind of, but this is honestly my favorite sequence of scenes in the game. Jetta made the critical mistake of underestimating Milla's power. By keeping Milla's stone body near Celica during the sacrifice scene, Milla witnessed Celica's struggle to reach her. Despite everyone's belief that Milla had abandoned them, her spirit remained intact this entire time, and seeing Celica persevere this much showed her the strength possessed by mankind. Jetta's next critical mistake was sending Celica and Milla's skull down to the royal vault to bait Alm into fighting Celica. In the prison, Milla was able to visibly call out to Alm. In his clash with Celica, she was able to speak to him, to grab the falchion. Why? To use it as a conduit to transfer her godly powers directly into Celica, resurrecting her soul, saving her, and ultimately validating the prophecy. That white blood isn't white for the sake of censorship. That is Celica's blood being purified of Duma's magic. Then, when she seems to have died, Milla resurrects her. Remember that premonition scene in the beginning? For a long time, I didn't know what it was supposed to mean. Was it just a trendy Fire Emblem thing to do nowadays? Well, yeah, but what Echoes attempts to illustrate in the beginning of the game is that prophecy, the foretelling of what is to come. Here is Alm, humanity's best chance to save Duma from his madness, uniting with Celica, who, while has a lack of faith in humanity herself, single-handedly proves how determined and capable humanity is.
Milla.
Alm, aunties, children of fate. You have overcome much to reach me here, and I thank you both. You have shown me the strength possessed by mankind. Perhaps men have long been walking on their own, without our aid. Perhaps I simply refused to see it. And alas, Duma was no different. I entrust Falchion to your care. I pray you will use it to free my brother from the depths of his pain.
Together, they humble Milla, and metaphorically win against her. They stop her from stopping them, and eventually, they put Duma to rest, with Falchion, or Nosferatu, just as Naga and Rudolph had hoped.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
Don't apologize. Just know that I need you, all right? Without your wisdom, all I know how to do is fight whatever's in front of me. So please, will you fight with me? Believe in me. Believe in us. Believe in our combined strength.
I do. It's as Milla said. We've had the strength to live and fight for our world this whole time. I lost faith in that somewhere along the way. But right now, it seems the most obvious thing in the world. I trust in mankind like I trust in you, Absolutely. And without hesitation.
And that's that. It's not that Celica learns that she shouldn't have faith in the gods, it's that she needs to have faith in people. A new era of Valentia is about to begin. One without Milla and Duma, but Celica is no longer fearful of that future. Instead, she has hope. Celica started this mission with the intention to figure out what's happened to Milla. In that journey, she goes through some familiar beats as most heroes in Fire Emblem do. Goes on side missions to free her people, help her 2B allies, and generally shows us her heroism. Throughout Act 2 and 3, what drives her to do these things is her self-sacrificing nature, resolve to never give up on her mission, and faith in herself and in Milla to stay hopeful. In Act 4, we see some of those strengths become setbacks for her. Her self-sacrificing nature gets exploited, and her piety and faith in herself frustrates her allies. Despite these setbacks and continuous internal struggle to find the right answer, she never gives up. That resolve carries her all the way to Duma Tower. Her desperate sacrifice doesn't ease Duma, but it contributes greatly to humbling Milla and making her see what humanity can do without gods. Because of Celica's core person, Milla unbinds Halcyon for Alm, resurrects Celica, and accepts her and her brother's fate. Celica's character drives half of the narrative that Echoes wants to tell. She represents Milla's philosophy on humanity. She represents the hopes and fears of her people. But she also represents how resilient and capable humanity is. But because of that resiliency, Celica and Alm defeat Milla, defeat Duma, and fulfill the prophecy. Through her individual struggle and cooperation with Alm, she contributes to proving that collectively, humanity is stronger than Milla or Duma could ever be by themselves. Celica has several good desires: a love for Alm, a love for her people, and a love for Milla. Just like in life though, the things we value come in conflict with one another, and we don't make idealistic decisions. Compromises are made and no one's happy about the choice, not even ourselves. Because of this, it's pretty understandable that people would get frustrated by Celica. Add on top of this that Echoes' writing does not perfectly navigate such a complex internal process all the time. However, Celica overcomes all of this by letting go of what she sought after to preserve what she can have. Milla cannot be around anymore, but she can have her friends, and they will stay for her because of her drive, her charisma, her love for others, and her sense of justice. After all of these months of research, I have been consistently impressed to see how Celica thinks and grows. She may not be perfect, but she may be one of Fire Emblem's most complexly written protagonists. That itself is worthy of praise.